Hi, my name is Kara Bukowski. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with Team 341. My credentials or my background is that I was started off in first as a student. I was a student on my team for all 4 years. I grew up in Michigan, so I was not on a local team. I was on team 1189 the Gearheads from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. I've been volunteering since 2011, which was my senior year of high school. That's what really sucked me into first for kind of the lifetime. I've been a mentor for 10 years plus 25 days. I actually counted because I knew it was right around this time back in 2015. And I also received the 2021 Woody Flowers Finalist Award from the district championship that year. That was the virtual or remote year, so that was a really fun year to win it. I have a degree in materials science and engineering. You'll notice that I have a degree in engineering, I do quality systems work, and then I am here talking to you about design binder, which is largely visual. My qualifications is I did journalism in high school. That is the only qualification I have for this. But that did teach me a lot about how to communicate information visually, how to actually some of the terminology for how to actually lay out a page, how to communicate, some types of graphics that you can put on pages. So if you have students who are in that, get them involved in this. This will be a great way to apply those skills and get some more real world application. I also have 3 cats. You can see them on the screen. They are very cute. You'll see them a few more times. So one of the reasons that we get asked a lot about our design binder is because we seem to keep doing a lot of things that indicate that we are excellent at engineering, and a large part of that comes from what you see as our engineering in terms of which is our robot and our design binders. I didn't have this on here to brag necessarily, but wanted to show that there's a lot of factors that play in your success at competitions, both in terms of robot performance, in terms of awards, really in that kind of winning success. There's a lot of success in this program that's not winning, but winning is fun, honestly. But there's a lot of intersections between robot performance and judging. By sustaining excellence in your design binder, that will help your students become a lot more confident and aligned in how they communicate about your robot and about your team. So as we have improved these binders, we have really had an improvement in how we have performed at events. There's a lot of different factors in that and how we run our team, but a lot of the success is by having this documentation because of the benefits that it gives you. One big thing is that all of this is because of them. These are them being the students. A design binder doesn't win you awards. It doesn't advance your program. The students are what does that. So a lot of this throughout, you'll hear me say, this is something the students have to buy in. The students have to do that. The students have to do this. It's because they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones understanding the process. They're the ones to best communicate it. So I've used the term design binder a couple of times here. Figured it was probably good to define it. I define a design binder as something that is reader-friendly documentation of the robot design and build process. This is something that needs to tell the story of how and why you ended up with what you did and what you learned in the process. That is the entire purpose of what you should have in this binder. However, note that your design binder is only going to be as effective as your design process is good. If your design process is not good, you won't have a process to show. So this is just a kind of an example of our design binder in action. The page that he is showing in this picture here, that is this page right here. So you can see, you'll see several more pictures on this of just how we're able to use this at competitions or in the community to talk and show off our program to a ton of different people. So what is actually in a design binder is going to depend a lot on what your process looks like, who your target audience is, and what your goals are with the process of building and having one of these. In general, what you want to show is the engineering process. There's a whole lot of different models of what the engineering design process can look like. If you just Google it, you'll end up with all these fun flowcharts. And they all say a few different things, but they all boil down to brainstorming, prototyping or testing, what key decisions you made, some spotlights and special or interesting features. You're not going to find that in there, but that is an important thing to show in this binder. And then also a high-level summary of what you finished with. What does your final robot look like? So One thing that is important is that today I'm not talking about a brochure. I'm not talking about a single page handout or any kind of summary document. We are talking about like a full-fledged binder publication. So to give us an example of that, on the left, this is one of our, it's kind of like a full-page summary flyer. This is really great for just handing to somebody who, like, they want to know the details. That's all they are interested in knowing. They want to know the specs. But that is not what we'd call a design binder. That's just a really high-level summary of the facts about the robot. This is a design binder. It does not have to be this long. I also encourage you to not make it this long. It's a lot of work. But we had a really good robot this year. We also had a good design binder. This was the longest one we've had. So you do not have to do that. Please don't do that. So another reason why you're doing this is because it is a tool. It can be a tool to help explain the robot to your community. It can be a tool to help with judging. It can be a document that you can send to your sponsors or to show your sponsors what they are supporting or what they could be supporting. This picture over here is myself with one of the founders of Onshape. He stopped by our pit at Champs this past year? Yeah, this past year, just because he heard that we were using Onshape and wanted to see like how we liked it. Do we have any suggestions? And unfortunately, we had no students in the pit at this time. I don't know why, but I was able to flip through the design binder, and this has a ton of CAD in it. We were able to show him like what did we do with his software, and he found it so fascinating and engaging. So that's just a really good example of like what you do matters, and what you do can really help push your program to the next level. It can also be a good way to talk about or show off your robot when you don't actually have the robot. If, say, it's off like waiting in the queue at Champs like for 5 hours before your match. Or if you have some sort of community event, you can't bring your robot, this can show kind of what you have built and show that without the robot being there. So again, just more examples at pretty much every event. If you look through our Flickr, you will find photo after photo after photo of like this binder is being used. Other people looking at it. Our students with it in hand explaining it. This thing gets a lot of use, which is why we do put a lot of effort into it. So the reason that we have this, the reason we put this effort into it is because you're going to get a lot of benefits. The benefits and like the little more like intangibles are that this can be a good project for students who aren't as interested in the robot side of things. Again, if you have students who are interested in communications or journalism or writing or photography, this is a great project that they can contribute to kind of encourage that more creative side of the team. This also encourages students to think about the design process instead of just doing it. If they know from the get-go that they're going to have to document this and put it together, they're going to think a lot more about what they're doing. You also can generate a ton of photos if you do this correctly. Those photos are great for just having around. Use them in promotional materials, use them however you want. And then this also hopefully provides good documentation of the design and build process that you went through, and you can use it as a teaching tool for future years. So the screenshot over here is a good example of like encouraging students to think about that process and to try and document that design. This was, you can see it's a post from April, this is going to be probably right before District Champs, I think, of a student asking, do we want to add a page for this mechanism that we've iterated a lot and like should be given a little bit more attention. So they're really thinking about like how do we want to communicate our robot. So today we're going to be focusing specifically on the design binder to use as a judging tool, because I've had the feeling that's a lot of what you folks are in here for, because you've seen it in our pit. You've seen us use it in that context. What you really need to know about judging is that judges have limited time. They have 30 or more other teams that they're going to be talking to. You need to make your time count. I know there was another presentation on judging earlier today. Hopefully you learned this information in that as well. But when you have the judges in your pit, you want to show them things. Nothing shows like, hey, we thought about this a lot, than having that documentation. If you didn't document it, you didn't do it. Show that you care about that process. It's also a lot easier to remember a visual than a quote. If you say, like, we have this problem where this thing kept breaking. A lot of teams have problems where things keep breaking. But if you can say, this thing kept breaking in this very specific way, here's a photo, and you show them a picture of a twisted shaft, they're going to remember that a lot better than just the quote. And then you can also send this off with judges if they will accept it. Some judges will take printed material, sometimes they won't, but you can at least try. One reason this really plays into awards and judging is because every single Judged Robot Award references the design process in its description or guidelines. You can see where it's highlighted here of saying like design, development, testing, tracing its conception and design, describing how they do this, detailed process used to develop it. This is a way that you can communicate that and make it very, very evident that, hey, we meet the criteria for these awards, you should consider us. A way to use it as a judging tool, use it to convey things that you can't show in person, like past events. So it's impossible to read a paragraph and listen to a person talk and take in all that information. I know I kind of break that rule by having no visuals on this slide, but that should also hopefully emphasize this point. When you make a presentation, you don't want it to be all text because people cannot read and listen at the same time. You don't want to read exactly what your slides have on them. Same concept with a binder like this. But you can absolutely look at pictures and listen to a person talk. That's a lot easier. So in order to show things from the past, you need to remember to capture them when it happens. And to know what you need to capture, you need a plan. This is something that you want to plan for before build season and not the week of your first competition. There's a lot of planning that has to go into something like this. And the week before your competition, you do not have all that time. The first component of it is to pick a platform. Don't use a software that doesn't allow you to do multiple things at once. Microsoft Publisher, honestly, if it still exists, I do not use it. Adobe InDesign, great software for professionals. Super steep learning curve, not collaborative. If you have something like Canva or Google Docs, Google Slides, some sort of Microsoft-based collaborative platform, use that. We use Canva for our design binder. We previously used InDesign. And there's a great picture here of a student saying like, hey, I did not realize I had to save all these things to this file. So to the coach that took it home to like do kind of a final run through and print it off, you're gonna be missing a lot of stuff. So that is not where you wanna be. You want everything to be accessible and collaborative. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of disjointed information and you're probably gonna have a lot of information missing. Getting student buy-in, you're gonna need a lot of content. Again, don't make a 57-page design binder. Do not recommend, but you still need content no matter how long or short it is. That content needs to come from the students because they designed this robot, they built it. They're the ones who are talking about it. It should be content that they want to have in it. They will not benefit from this activity if they don't do the work to make this. If the students don't want it, the content will be bad. If you even finish it, the students are going to be mad at you for it if they didn't want to do it in the first place. If you are a student and you really want something like this, you need to buy into it. You need to put in the effort to make it. Do not let or make your mentors make it for you. With that is also establishing your expectations. Before build season starts, write it down, agree on what you expect your timeline to be and what content you want to have. When are you going to start working on this? Are you going to have a template or a plan before build season? Are you not? Who's responsible for initializing this document? Who's responsible for making the file on Canva? What content do you need to be generating throughout the season? Do you need to be having people report out in a written form? What did they do each work session? Do you need to make sure that we are having pictures taken at every point in the process? That's something that they need to know ahead of time because you can't take pictures of things that happened in the past. Making sure you understand and agree on who is generating the content is a big thing that we have had issues with in the past, kind of pre-pandemic, was that there was this conception that, oh, the media team is supposed to be taking all the pictures for the design binder. Well, guess what? The media team is not going to be there for every decision that you make and every test that you do. That's not their purpose. So that difference in communication meant that we didn't really have a lot of great pictures that year, and you can see that in the product that we put out. Who's responsible for keeping the project moving? Do you have a project manager? Is it going to be a mentor that keeps pushing it? When do you need to finish it by? Is it going to be finished before your first competition or before your second competition? Is it going to be finished like 2 weeks before so you have time to print it because you need that lead time? When is that to be done by? And also, who's going to print it? This is a really important part that often gets not decided before build season starts and is usually a, hey, week of, like, oh, do we need to send this off to a printer? Who has enough ink to print this at home? Can we get it done at school? Not the situation you need to be in. Questions up through this point? All right.
So
yeah.
Other than content and photos, what else do you recommend going into the binder?
That's the whole rest of the presentation. So included with your plan, you need to have a brand, or you need to at least have a theme. Brands are memorable, and you want to be memorable. The page on the left is what we had in the design binder. The page on the right is me taking all of that nice visual and branding out and just having kind of like the default text and a little bit of color. So you can really see that, like, in a world full of all the stuff on the right, where there's not a lot of effort put into branding, what's on the left really, really stands out. And that's what you want. You want to be memorable. My brand is cats. All the presentations that I make for our team usually has a cat or two or several in it. In last year's hardware measuring training, we had 12 different cat photos in it. However, the students really remembered things on those slides because of the cats on them. So there's my brand. That's what I stick to. It works. It's memorable. If you don't have a brand, our head coach gave a presentation at Ramp Riot all about branding, why and how to do it. She did not give that presentation here, but we are working on getting all those presentations uploaded to YouTube. I've been promised that it will be before the holidays. If anybody wants to stop and take a picture of this QR code, you are welcome to. I'm not saying you have to. All right, the next part is content. This is where we're going. Everything that you put into this should be helpful and meaningful to your audience or audiences. We're talking about this as a judging tool today, but if you intend this to be something to communicate to your sponsors, to your community, you still need to keep that in mind. You can't just make it for one audience and expect it to kind of satisfy all of them. Everybody is looking for different things. Some general tips for collecting content. Generate and collect it throughout the season. Don't just do it at the end. It's really hard to remember your decisions after the fact. You will not remember in week 6 what you decided on in week 2 and what you exactly talked about. Your memory is not that good. Write it down the day that it happens. Prototypes also get disassembled pretty fast. You want to take pictures of them as they happen. They're going to change daily. They're going to get taken apart daily. You want to have those pictures, take them then. Make that, establish that as the expectation from the get-go. Document everything that you have. And keep everything that you have, whether it's hand-drawn sketches, whiteboard drawings. Take pictures of those. CAD, if you use Onshape, then you will have a whole CAD repository and versioning that you can go through. You should be using Onshape. If you were here for Sean's presentation, you'll know that you should be using it. If you're not, you're doing it incorrectly. You should also plan to have a variety of content, both visual and written, but the visuals are the most important. A picture is worth 1,000 words. You don't have time to speak 1,000 words when you have a judge in your pit. So we're going to talk about written content first. You need to remember who your audience is. You all probably don't know what lorem ipsum is, but I don't care because I thought it was funny on this slide. That was a personal choice. Nobody wants to read your journal, your dissertation, or your AP Lang essay. You don't want to have all writing in your binder. That's not the purpose. Another tip is that your design process is still going to execute no matter how many days it takes. This does not need to be a narrative of, on Monday we did this, on Tuesday we did that, the next week we did this. That doesn't matter. Sometimes the passage of time is good if it's relevant. If you say, you made a decision in one day without prototyping and you really regretted that later, 2 weeks later when you're trying to build the real thing, that could be relevant. If you had 3 weeks to iterate on something and that's why it became a lot better, that's relevant. But saying, on Monday I tried this, on Tuesday I tried changing the bolts, on Wednesday I tried changing to a different motor, nobody cares if that happened on Wednesday versus Monday. What they do care about is that you went through these specific parts of the process. You want to write like you're talking to a middle schooler, but as if your work is being graded by your AP Lang teacher, or what you think an AP Lang teacher would expect if you took that class. If you have too much technical detail, it's off-putting to the average reader. If you don't have enough technical detail, it's not going to be helpful to some parts of your audience. Nobody will take you seriously if you use run-on sentences. That's where the graded by your AP Lang teacher comes in. You want to keep your style and your voice consistent, which is pretty difficult when you have so many authors that are high school age and all have different opinions and experiences. Do your best. This is it really just comes down to this is how you write their sentences. I know that I write sentences a very specific way. I can tell that things written by our head coach were written a specific way, even though they were 5 years ago. I just know her style of writing. Everybody has a different way of doing this. You want to try your hardest to keep it consistent. Also, please keep the tense consistent. A lot of what you were doing happened in the past, but you also are going to have to talk a little bit in the future, in the present, saying we had this, or we then went to that, or we want to do this next. You will have to change a little bit, but you want to overall keep it consistent. Bullet points are great. Please use them. You also look so much more professional if you know what a proper noun is, if you know when to capitalize words. It is really distracting otherwise. This is a pet peeve of mine. I had a professor in college who, every single slide that they had, every single word was capitalized, and I probably would have learned a lot more from that class if he had not done that. Visual content. Photos. Take photos. This is the most important thing that you can do. You can't show the process effectively unless you take photos of the process. That is how you show something. Your phones have great cameras. You should use them. You do not need a media team with expensive DSLR or mirrorless cameras. You have a great camera in your pocket. Cameras that you have in your pockets are also really easy to access. Anybody can take these photos. Everybody is responsible for documenting this. If you keep a central repository and some form of organization, that will also help you a lot later, because you won't have to necessarily go hunting for photos in places that you can't find. Taking high quality photos, if they are dark or grainy or low quality, they're not going to print out well. This one looks pretty bad on the screen. It looks pretty bad in whoever currently has the 2025 binder. It's really hard to see detail in print photos, and it's even harder when they're small or fuzzy or dark. And don't take screenshots of videos unless you are desperate. If you have a video of a prototype, like doing a thing, make sure you get a picture of that prototype separately, just a picture, because it will not look good. Again, this is an example of, it's really the arrows are doing a lot of work here to show what these captions are saying, because otherwise you would not be able to tell what's happening in this photo. So here's an example of a great example of a slide that has a ton of different quality photos. Some of these are screenshots, some of them are nice camera photos, some of them are like cell phone photos. If the projector was better and we had a little bit of a darker environment, I'd ask you to pick out which ones were screenshots of videos, but I can tell you that let's see, can I find my mouse? This one is a screenshot from a video. This one's a screenshot from a video. This is a screenshot from a video. This is a screenshot from a video. This is a CAD rendering. This is a nice photo. This is a nice photo. I think this one came off of our Flickr, and this one may have come off of a cell phone. So just by comparing, say, that to that, you can see there's a big difference. And in the print version, you can tell even more. Mixing it up is also a big component of this. Don't let your audience get bored. Put in some CAD, put in some sketches, put in some diagrams. If you have nice glamour shots of your robot, put those in. It helps just keep them engaged as they're going through this. And it makes it a lot less just boring, dull, monotonous. So some examples of what we've got in here. Slide on the left, we've got sketches and we've got whiteboards. We've got CAD. We kind of have everything on this slide, and there's a lot to look at, but it shows that we are doing a lot of things in this process. In the middle, believe it or not, one of these is a rendering, one of these is an actual real-life photo. We are lucky enough to have a couple of coaches who do really professional grade videography and photography. We were able to get the super nice photos. They look great compared with the renderings right next to them. On the far right, this has some diagrams, some color coding that is really effective here in showing the different positions and the different capabilities of the robot, and shows the climb process. If you did math, if you did physics, if you did FEA, you should show it. Part of the engineering process is doing the math. You should show the math that you did. We have done an increasing amount of math over the past 10 years, and the only binder in the past 10 years that I could find that actually has shown the math is this one, which is from 2016. This is actually probably one of the only years recently that we've actually done an FEA, so it's really great that we showed it. This actually has a great photo that shows CAD and computer work, but the page is designed awfully. Pictures are great, though. Question?
This was also your 2018 robot design binder. That's a really cool, how you solved how far the arm could reach.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I totally did not catch that. Was it just a showing, or was it actual these are the numbers?
It was a whiteboard where you did all the math.
Okay, great. I did not catch that. Thank you. That makes me feel a little bit better about this. Here's a couple other examples that I grabbed from other teams of just different ways to show content. Actually, I think 2 out of the 3 of these came from the Killer Bees, which I saw at championships. The one on the bottom right is 316's pit display, which is another great way of showing this content. I thought this was really cool. And I still want to know more about how you guys do it, even though I've been told 5 times. And then top right is a really nice way of just showing electrical layout that communicates that pretty effectively. If you broke something, show it. We want to see it. Hopefully you learn something from it, and that's still part of the process is learning. Showing your failures means that you learned something from it. In 2022, we learned a lot about mechanics and materials and material properties because we broke many, many shafts on our climber. It would have been really, really great if we had included these photos in that design binder. We did not. We had these shafts with us at the competition to pick it up and show someone, but it's not quite the same as seeing it in print and saying, oops, we messed up. So your visuals should be at least 60% of your design binder. That is how important they are. That's why it's important that you intentionally collect them and make them. This is also helpful to anybody, not just judges, because nobody really has an attention span. If you think you do, you are lying. So if you ignore that one of these has 57 pages and the other has 29, that does not matter. You can see that on the left, there is so much more visual content. There is a lot more color. There are a lot more pictures. There's a lot more diagrams than what you see on the right. The right is about 60% words, 30% visuals, which is not really what you're going for. A couple other ways to kind of make sure you're showing the process and put it into a form that is digestible for this kind of binder versus any other purpose. On the left is just a one-page flyer that we made for our climber. This is really great that it shows the process, but it's meant for reading. It's not meant for a quick hit, here's what we did, here's all the steps in the process. On the right, it shows that you did the process. It's really useful. It has a flow chart. It showed that it can show a little bit more the specific changes that you made throughout the process instead of a really high level. We got some more examples of just showing progressions or showing parts of the process. I asked my students what have been the most helpful pages that you've had in the design binders over the past couple of years. What have you used most when you've been showing these to people, talking to judges? And this is what they came up with. This is what they told me after sitting through these, looking through them again. On the top left, we have a flow chart. This one showed that we ended up not actually going with this design. That's really important. And then still showing that all the things you went through on the way shows that you did the process. On the top right, this shows how we planned our electrical layout this past year. A lot of the wires that we had ran underneath the robot. You can't really see that very well in the pit, but you can see it a lot better when you have a diagram that shows it. The drive base one down here, this shows a kind of a new thing that we did that we thought was a real big improvement. So we highlighted that in this binder, and we're able to talk about it a lot so that we can see the clear before and after and why it was an improvement. And then the bottom right, this is honestly one of my favorite pages that we've had in probably the past 10 years. It's got a lot of text on it, but the visual on here is probably more meaningful than the text, and it shows how the whole range of motion of our arm and how it moved in different orientations throughout that process. So this was I saw this page up all the time. Students love showing this because it shows motion. You can talk about motion, but it's way better if you can see it. So visuals. I'm once again asking, please include visuals in your binder. Memes are great too. I would minimize them. Questions up until this point. All right, talking about content, what you were actually putting into this binder. You're putting the process into this. You're going through brainstorming, what you prototyped, what failed, what worked, what you decided. We already talked about all these things. We're going to go through some examples of all 5 of these points. So just overall flow of this binder, you want to start at the beginning and end at the end. It should be a clear chronological process that goes from kickoff through prototyping to the robot. Your season goes in that order. That's going to be the easiest to understand because that's what kind of everybody is expecting. I also recommend starting from the bottom and going up when you're talking about your robot. You don't want to give your audience whiplash by going from one area to another to another. You can see things visually easily going up and down instead of having to try and figure out where one thing starts and the other thing ends as you're jumping between them. So if you start with your drive base, that is the base of your robot. You should start with your base. Then, as you go up, you usually go through how do you interact with the field? What are those top functions? The end game is usually going to be the last thing that you do. It's the end game for a reason. That's probably going to be the last thing you talk about. Even if it's integrated with another mechanism, you probably want to have a specific thing that talks about how you address that end game. And then we typically put the electrical and programming sections at the end just to preserve the flow through the robot. You need to include them. They're very important, but they're involved in all of the areas of the robot. So trying to sprinkle them in is a little bit difficult and distracting unless you have something that's really, really that you really want to highlight in specific sections. So like where we highlighted the WAGOs here, or like this was in the part about the driveways. This was pretty early up in the binder, but it was something that was very specific to this mechanism, so we included it there instead. Question?
How do you do visuals for software?
I think I've got a couple of examples of that a little bit later. It's hard. It's really, really, really hard. I've got a couple examples, but we have always struggled with it. So I have an example here of kind of what not to do. So we start off great. We start off by giving a high-level summary. We go through the start of the process. Then we talk about we go right from the drivetrain to the shooter, and then we go down to the intake, and then we go back up to the shooter. Then we go to the catcher. This is from 2014, I believe. You're going from shooter to intake back to shooter. Why are you doing that? That makes no sense. This is, I know there's a lot of colors and arrows, and it kind of looks like spaghetti, but if you follow the rainbow on this, this was 2024. So starting at the bottom, we go to the drive base, then we go to the intake. We do take kind of a side trip up to this amp trap mechanism because this mechanism was something that happened, like it was visually at the top of the robot, but it came between the intake and the conveyor because it was an important part of both systems. And there was some prototyping in there that kind of played into how we made decisions on both systems. So then from there, we just keep going up, conveyor, shooter, climber. It goes from bottom up to top. In terms of structure, and this is, again, something that's going to be dependent on like what resources you have, how well you take content throughout the season, but some kind of like concept versus examples of how we do it, breaking it up into digestible bites. Like this is why we have 57 pages, honestly, is because we had large visuals and we wanted to make each page a lot easier to understand rather than trying to cram a ton of tiny photos onto one page. Each system has its own section as a binder. It's clearly shown, like in this case, it's through the titles, which section you are in. Structuring each section the same way can help with just like anything that's repetitive is going to be a lot easier to remember, a lot easier to follow. People like repetition. So in every section that we have in the binder, it includes information about every steps of the design process for that system in the same order. For all of the systems, it goes from, we start with the requirements, then we go to prototypes, then we go to a final prototype, then to the very end, then to what we did between competitions. Every single subsystem here in this binder is going to be structured like that. Clearly indicating your progress throughout the process, all these page titles identify that current step. So you know, like, as you see it, where exactly you are. This is your roadmap. You want anybody to know where you are, and it kind of gives them a hint to where you're going. So then now for some visuals. So this is an example of just how we structure some of the different sections in our binders. So we start with brainstorming because our design is usually based on strategic objectives. This is something that is like, it's not really specific to like, this is not showing off like this is how we designed this climber, but it is kind of setting the stage for why we made the decisions that we did, and it also helps. Like sometimes we have sections like in these binders that say like these were the requirements we had to hit. This is what drove this prototyping, and those requirements came from here. That's why we have a section like this. Again, this is just a great example of like using visuals to convey things differently, keep it exciting. But also honestly the photos on these pages with the example of one of like a student being like very visually communicative. This is something that's really hard to explain in photos. So we chose to use some different visuals there with color coding to kind of make it a little bit easier to read, especially because there was a lot of text. But moving through prototypes, what you prototyped, what you failed, what worked. These are all parts of the learning process and part of that design process that you really want to highlight. This is the meat of what you should be showing. So a couple of examples here of just different ways to show this. We have this on the left is kind of showing like parallel path. We were trying 3 different designs in the very beginning. I'm usually not a fan of like pros and cons because I think that it's really easy to say the pro of this mechanism is the con of this mechanism. And it's very difficult to get kind of unique content for each one. But here, when you're trying to show like parallel pathing, this was a really efficient way to do that. One of these, for like say the pincher, we went through a lot of steps and a lot of different parallel paths within that. So on one of the next slides, one of the next pages, we showed that path throughout the process. We showed also a couple of things that like just right off the bat, decided not to do them. Did one test. We had a ton of issues with it. We're not going to do it. Another couple of examples of flowcharts that show like decision points. There are going to be very few mechanisms where you go through the prototyping process and you do not decide to scrap something. You generally are not going to hit it perfect on the first try. You want to show like where you decided not to do something or where you decided we want to do something. If you there's a point where you said we want this, we like this is what's going to make us go forward. Highlight that. Key decision points, another way to do that is by like specifically calling it out. This is a very poor way of doing it. This is saying that we decided to follow through with this design. This is a very small part and like a very interesting part on this very busy page. Not the way to do it. It would have been a good idea to say like highlight this in green or make it something special, make it stand out, because that's something that's a specific point in the process that you really want to highlight. Don't bury that. Spotlights on special or interesting features. If you have something in your robot that's really, really cool, people want to know about those features. Give them what they want. We had these are going to be the things that like people are going to come up and ask you in your pit, how did you do this? How did you design that? Tell me more about this. Make sure you have content on that really explains that, especially if you have this as something like in your pit that people can just pick up and read, even if your robot or your team isn't there. Have enough information that you can show the interesting points of that and what you think people want to know. An example of doing it poorly is here in the middle. This was from our 2022 design binder. One of the coolest things on this robot were the hooks on the climber that year that were made from like gears completely bored out in the center and put into like a horseshoe shape. Super, super cool thing. Got so many questions about it. The only place that we like really mention and highlight this is this like tiny quarter of one page. For example, better examples here on the left and right. We have gotten a lot better since 2022. People also want to know the final robot specs. Give them what they want. This should not be your entire binder. This should be like one page at the top or one page at the end. It also helps to kind of give a roadmap and explain like where the different parts of your robot are from the start, from the get-go, so that later when you're saying, oh, this is our intake, and you're starting at the very beginning of the process as you go through each of these subsystems, they're not necessarily going to know like what an intake is or what it looks like. Visually show at the very beginning, this is kind of what the end product was, so they have some idea of where they're going. You also didn't build a paperweight, hopefully. It's really easy to focus on the mechanical, but there are other really critical parts of the process, like strategy, wiring, sensors, programming. These two on the in the middle and the right here, these are kind of standard of what we've done for programming the past couple of years. It's really hard because whatever visuals you can get is helpful there. If you're able to show, we have kind of path planning and path visualization tools. We'll take some screenshots of those. In this case, we showed kind of a start and finish of the shooter hood as just it's not going to tell you exactly how it works, but it shows you what it does, which is kind of the next best thing. But admittedly, this is hard. We usually have 2 pages in here. However, having your autonomous paths in that kind of visual, really, really, really helpful when people come up to your pit and ask, what are your autonomous modes? Great to have that right there. Questions on anything so far? All right, so you have your content. Now let's see some examples of what's bad, what's good. This is bad. There's a lot of text there. This is back to the 60% text, or 66% text, 33% visuals. Nobody wants to read this. This is so unappealing. There is a lot of empty white space here. There's a lot of pictures that aren't really exciting or very helpful. I know they're kind of small. What is this? This shows me nothing. This shows me nothing without any more context. On one of these, it says part 1 lifting winch. There is no part 2 in the rest of the binder. This is where it gets like disjointed, having stuff go through like InDesign, different people writing different things. These pages all look the same. This is one mechanism from 1 year. All these pages look the same. It's really boring. It looks like I'm reading a journal. I also found that this was like really funny. This binder had several like exploded views of mechanisms. That doesn't tell me anything. But also like things exploded in like places that they aren't actually. I don't know how we made these, but they there were some where it's like, I see this component in real life, but it's like not in this exploded view, or like there's something in this exploded view that like doesn't exist or is like in the way in real life. Like I don't know how they happened, but it adds nothing. So having like a picture or a visual for visual's sake isn't helpful if it doesn't actually contribute to that story. Something like this is better. I'm not saying that these are great, but they're an improvement. There's a lot less text on the page. There's still some things that aren't super, super great here. So things like not having good space between like the photos and the text, having a ton of like varied widths. Still tells the story. It's a little bit easier to digest, but it still has some things that are like distracting. Like how close this text is to this image. I don't know if it distracts you, but it really distracts me. We're getting somewhere now with this. There's a lot of variation. There's a lot of information about the mechanism development that you can still read. And the order of operations here is pretty clear, especially as you're showing like, this is what we started with, this is what we ended with. This is what we started with, this is what we're ending with. This is how this thing works, start to finish. This is the total path. So it's a lot more clear to the reader what you're looking at. Another concept in just like general page design is hierarchy. So you want think of this like a newspaper. The title is going to be the biggest thing. The subheading is going to be the next biggest thing, potentially. Then you have a story. You may have some pull quotes to add emphasis. If a picture is really, really big, that means that it's really important. It's something that you need to, that your eye is trying to be drawn to. You should follow the same concepts here, because you are telling a story in the same way that a newspaper article is telling you a story. The captions, absolutely use them. Because the visual that's actually shown is not necessarily, you understand how your team works, you know what your team did, that photo may make sense to you, but it might not make sense to somebody else who doesn't really know, what a mock game is. We explained this here, what these students are doing in this photo. However, you want to keep them brief, and you want to make it very clear what is happening, which photo it is captioning. You can use the left, right, above, etc. If you have a ton of pictures that are close together, and you really need to show it. As for example, these two are they're right next to each other. We've got some clear definition here. This clearly belongs to this picture. And with this, it's not necessarily, I don't think that we had a left or right on this one. So you don't really know necessarily which picture it is. Once you read it, you realize that it's applicable to both pictures, but you don't necessarily know that from the get-go. So you only really need to use that left, right, center if there are multiple possible subjects. As more examples, we got some yikes here and some that's a lot better. These photos are clearly clustered. There's one caption for them. Makes sense. The formatting of this is a little bit better. I would have made the font smaller, the pictures bigger to get it all in one line. But again, you have pictures clustered together. This pretty clearly belongs to this. These captions over here on the left are very, very unhelpful. Hook. Wow, I really know what cool, there's a hook there. I really needed to know that. Or 43 inches. What on earth is 43 inches referring to here? That is the most unuseful information. Who is Coach Schaefer? Why does he matter? These are absolutely not helpful. These are helpful. They're saying the electrical team is installing wiring. The drive base is student design. Here's a student, what's on his computer is a drive base. The visual should be meaningful and should be helpful. So as I mentioned before, this is what the exploded gear thing looks like. That makes no sense. But over here on the left, we have an exploded view of something. It is useful here. This is good. It shows the parts of the gearbox that you can't see when it's assembled. That's why exploding it makes sense. And this is captioned to show exactly what you are seeing. You are seeing a custom-made lantern gear. You are seeing some 3D printed components. You are seeing the following gear, part of that, that is being used for an encoder. You wouldn't really be able to know that if that caption wasn't there. So you want to show why you have that exploded view, what benefit is it giving you. Over here on the right, This is the exploded version that is bad. There's no captions. There's no header. You don't know what you're seeing. This looks nothing like the assembled version that's here. Like these, like there's tubes that are supposed to be going across there. Like I guess like they're kind of these tubes here, but like it's so hard to tell because they're all exploded at different lengths. It looks nothing like the actual assembled version. You can't read the words on this right now, but trust me, they don't explain what's going on here either. This is a very, very useless page. Do not forget your table of contents. It makes it really easy for you to find what you want to show. And it makes it easy for somebody to find what they're actually interested in. If you are fumbling for something, it takes away from your judging time. It makes you look a little bit less prepared, a little bit less together. Putting dividers in your binder is a great way to help with that. Make sure you get the ones that work with page protectors. They are like special ones that are meant to extend beyond the page protector. So it's up until this point. All right, keeping it polished. If it looks good, it is going to make you look a lot better. There's this concept in like the kind of the robot side that if your robot looks good, you're probably more likely to get picked because it looks like you know what you're doing. Same thing kind of applies here. So with keeping it polished, it is the little things. The small details are what takes your binder from good to great. Quote that I wrote down for one of my students this year, which I thought it was funny, was that one of our students said, every year we get a good example of what not to do before Kara gets her hands on it. These students said, like, it is so hard to like train and give like a full like class on how to do this. But if you have somebody who is really in charge of content control, somebody who can make it consistent, somebody who can show you this is what's good, this is what's bad, that is not only effective mentoring, but it's also going to make your binder look a lot better. Having consistent text, if you have a font in your brand kit, use it. If you don't, stick to like the standards. Stick to like Arial, Calibri, Helvetica, Aptos, like whatever those default fonts are, stick to that. Text hierarchy, we talked about that a little bit earlier. You want to have like a very clear header, subheader, body, caption, etc. For each of those levels, it should be consistent. Consistent font, consistent like bold italic style, consistent color for each of those levels. Is that just, again, people like repetition, and the first time they see it is going to be what their impression of it is. They want to see that throughout. For text alignment, believe it or not everything has to be centered. You can use left, right align. You can use justified. Not everything has to be centered. For style, do you want periods at the end of bullets? Do you not? Are you going to use Oxford commas? Are you not? You should use them. If you are going to be capitalizing things, like a system name or a field element, do it consistently. If you're going to say, like if you're going to capitalize only the A in algae versus the whole word algae, make sure you're doing it the same way throughout. And you also don't want to jump around the page because it makes it really hard to follow the text. So you go through here and then you go down to here. Like it's really hard to get from point A to point B, just because like there are all these pictures in the way. People are going to get lost. Like what I said before about nobody has an attention span. You will lose people just going from point A here to point B. Some more examples here of just inconsistencies. On the left, the text is too big in the space that it's in. Like this text should be a little bit smaller because again, it's just like too close to the borders. It's distracting. It looks like it's squished. It's like how somebody trying to like cram everything into one line when they're writing it. And you can see how it gets more squished. That's what this looks like. The captions here run way beyond the text underneath. The real issue here is also consistent alleys, which is the the issues actually with both of these are inconsistent alleys, which is we're going to go over on the next slide. The issues that over here with the one on the right, we've got conveyor with hooks. This is actually shorter than the text that's underneath and then the photo that's underneath. It's not this text goes over the side. Oops, sorry. And then the real issue again here is inconsistent alleys. These bullets are a lot closer to this photo than they are in this photo. That consistency is going to make it look a lot more polished if you can do it. I also know that we are a couple minutes past 3:50. If you have to leave, please leave. If not, I just have a couple more slides on this. Margins, guides, alignment. Stick to your margins. It looks more professional. 1/2 inch minimum. I'm going to give you guys a minute to walk out if we need to. All right. Consistent padding in text boxes. Padding is the space at the edge before you get to the text. Sorry. Aligning things corners to corners. You want the edges, particularly around the side, to align. If you use Canva, Shift+R will bring up your guides. Using space wisely and using all of it, like white space is bad. You don't want white space unless you do it intentionally. There's white space over here. There's white space over here. Better examples of using all the space. There is white space here, but it's pretty intentional. What's not good is this white, I have like white space at the bottom of this box. Over here on the left, there is space down here, but having that space allows you to visually align this sequence. That's okay. You did it intentionally. You did it on purpose. This is really bad. Do not do this. Find a way to make the content fit the space. Find a way to make the space fit the content. Renderings, resource intensive. Like we have kids who set up like a render farm and just sit there rendering for hours. It is worth it. It makes your binder look really, really polished. Like on the left here is the rendering. On the right is the photo. They look really similar. This is the last slide. If you break rules, do it on purpose. So over here on the left, the rule that we're breaking here is having the headers on the side. Almost the entire rest of the binder has the header, this box on the top. We broke it here onto the side, honestly because it looked weird having it on the top, but also because it really helps just break up the page overall. On this intake slide, there's a lot of text on this, but what we're describing here with these changes, it was not a linear process. It was not really easy to show it in pictures. So there's a lot of text there, but we did that on purpose. We are at the end. If you want a link to this presentation, it is here. This is a non-downloadable version, just for version control. If you would like a copy of this, please email me. It's kara@team341.com. It's pretty easy. Yeah, thank you. If you have questions, come on up. I can answer them. But I know a lot of you got to go.